Welcome to the Cables to Clouds podcast. Cloud adoption is on the rise, and many network infrastructure professionals are being asked to adopt a hybrid approach. As individuals who have already started this journey, we would like to empower those professionals with the tools and the knowledge to bridge the gap. Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Cables to Clouds podcast. Today, I am your host. My name is Chris Miles. Joining me as always, my elegant, beautiful co-hosts, Alex Perkins and Tim McConaughey. And today we are bringing you an episode that is, this has been done before. You can probably get this content or the full rundown of AWS reInvent elsewhere, but we're going to give you a recap of AWS reInvent from the networking perspective, and we'll definitely have to sprinkle in some of our takes on the AI extravaganza that was AWS reInvent 2023, right?
That's all there was, right?
Yeah, pretty much. But before we get into that, let's try to include a little bit of non-AWS news here. So, kicking us off will be Alex. What else happened in the world of cloud outside of AWS?
Yeah, so not a whole lot here. We got Google Gemini. This was announced actually today, the day we're recording, which is what is today, the 6th of December. In the US. So Gemini is, my understanding is it's like the new model underneath of Bard. And if you don't know, Bard is like basically Google's version of ChatGPT kind of. They did a bunch of like independent benchmarks on this, and it beat GPT-4, which is really, I guess, why this was such noteworthy. But also, like, some of the videos they showed of things it can do is actually really cool. They showed like it just using like a lot of context. Like one of the videos I watched is about helping like your kid do homework, and it literally like showed a kid's homework assignment. They scanned it in, and it analyzed the paper, told the kid like where it messed up, and then guided it through how to solve the homework assignment, which is just like. The video is super cool. We'll have to like link it somewhere, but it was really cool to see.
Great. So. And my kids can cheat on their homework too.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't show it like, giving them the answer. They showed it like actually working through it, but I'm sure it could be abused, right?
Yeah, I mean, as someone without kids, I just assumed many children around the world are using ChatGPT to cheat on their homework. Or currently, how is this any different? I guess.
So it depends. You do have to be 13 to sign up for an account, but I don't know how much that actually matters.
Real quick before we get into it, I have to lay this because my daughter came home from school today. She does a D&D club every 2 weeks, and apparently the normal dungeon master did not show up. So she told me that she was very proud of herself. She actually went to ChatGPT and asked it for like a prompt and stuff, and actually built like a whole D&D like just one-shot game out of a ChatGPT prompt. So wow, that was pretty cool.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, as someone that is currently involved in a D&D campaign, I can definitely say ChatGPT helps a lot, especially when it's your first time. So I can see the value there.
Cool. All right. The other one, so the Meta and IBM kind of teamed up and announced the AI Alliance, as they call it. And it looks like this is very early stages, but it's a group of 50. I don't know if it was just 50 that was on the article, or if there's some more, but it was 50 companies that are basically collaborating to what they call like a safe, open AI, right? It's like a charter to govern some of the AI stuff that's coming out.
Who's not on it though?
Yeah, there's a lot of people not on it, like OpenAI, Microsoft, Amazon. It is a lot of smaller companies.
Google too, right?
Yeah, Google, right? Yeah. Google's not on there, so it's interesting that it comes from Meta and IBM, who I don't think anyone is saying like they're in the lead of any of this AI stuff right now. So it's just kind of interesting to watch.
We need that governance. It just reminds me a little bit of like, who are the signatories to the Geneva Convention and stuff like that, like, or who's not the signatories, it's kind of one of those.
Yeah, right. Well, nice. So that wraps up our our typical news segment, since this is a very news centric episode. So we're gonna hop right in and get into AWS reInvent 2023. So, I think it was there. As anyone that's been following it whatsoever, there was a lot of AI sprinkled into just about every single thing, whether or not you wanted it or not, whether it felt relevant or not. AI was very prominent, and you can tell that's a major focal point for AWS right now, needing to kind of defend their lead in the cloud space potentially for their market share. So I don't know, what were y'all's general thoughts about the conference as a whole?
Yeah, I will definitely agree, Chris. It seemed like generative AI was sprinkled into every single talk. It seemed like I haven't watched a whole bunch of presentations yet, like breakout sessions yet, but I've probably like 2 or 3 of the ones I've watched. They all had a slide that was like, well, it's 2023. It wouldn't be a complete talk without talking about generative AI and how it fits into this. So that will definitely be the theme of this recap for sure. And I think a lot of the keynotes even were talking about it a lot as well. What did you think, Tim?
Yeah, 100%. Right. Like, I honestly, I watched reInvent mostly through the eyes of Twitter because, there was so many people there that I follow and that I'm involved with there that had a lot to say. And oh my God, you're right. AI and everything, even where it made no sense. There was like, I was waiting for like, AI lollipops and like, just like completely, I was waiting for the merchandise push, right? Like, and that thankfully didn't come. We didn't get Spaceballs, the generative AI, but, it was pretty crazy. What was interesting though, and we'll get to this, right? My main takeaway from it was there was a lot of stuff, but there wasn't a lot of network stuff, which makes me think that they are consolidating kind of their services offerings more than now that they have Lattice, now they have Cloud WAN. I think they're really hitting their stride and they're really kind of consolidating and solidifying.
Yeah, for sure. Like I will say, if you were someone involved in networking, this was probably, if you were looking for networking content from reInvent, you probably were left with a little bit to be desired for sure. There wasn't a lot of focus on new things, especially in networking. There was a lot of reinforcement on existing things and adoption of existing things like Cloud WAN, VPC Lattice, et cetera, which those are still relatively new technologies from the overall perspective. So I get it. But yeah, let's get into some of these announcements that were at least networking focused, and then maybe we can kind of pan back a little bit and look at the wider scale. But right on course with the topic of AI. Probably the biggest announcement was Amazon Q. I shouldn't say biggest announcement, but we'll relate it to the networking piece here in a second. But Amazon Q. So they have launched an AI-powered assistant that is available through the AWS console to assist you with numerous tasks, ranging from, there's options in QuickSight for doing proper business analytics. And then they also have this option for network troubleshooting. So it's relying on AWS. Oh my gosh, I already forgot the
reachability analyzer.
Reachability analyzer, right? So it's a way to basically, you have this chat bot, for lack of a better term. You give it a plain problem in plain English, right? Like, hey, my web server isn't talking to my database server. What's going on? And it automatically goes in, analyzes, looks at the instances, checks the NACLs, checks the security groups, et cetera, and gives you a proposed solution to fix the problem. They have a blog post about this, and it's very, it's very to the point, very direct. I'm curious to see how this will expand upon in more complex troubleshooting scenarios. But I don't know. What was your all's take on this so far?
Yeah, agreed. So it to me it feels a little bit like a first, almost like a proof of concept, like minimum viable product, because it's almost exclusively using BBC Reachability Analyzer, which to be fair is a really cool tool. I would love to see it pull in some of the other stuff, like wake me when it can go look at CloudWatch alarms, like wake me when it can look at port mirroring or look at VPC flow logs, right? Where's that, right? This is a good, don't get me wrong, this is a good first offer, right? It's really cool. The blog post is cool. You check it out. But yeah, man, I can't wait to see. In fact, I can't see how it'd be usable unless they start bringing in these other points of data.
Yeah, 100%. And, we kind of talked about this a little bit offline before we recorded, and some of the things, like I know it's early and it's in preview, but we were kind of joking about how it's like you can only ask it 20 questions a day, and it's if you hit new conversation, it wipes everything, and after 24 hours, it wipes everything. So obviously, I think I agree, Tim. It's more of like a proof of concept right now, and like you said, just the potential is definitely there. So it'll just be something cool to watch and see. And it's $25 a month per user, I think was the pricing we saw, which seems, I don't know. I mean, I guess if you don't have that many people working on it, it
seems steep to me, but we also don't know what defines a user. Tim, like, was a user an account or an actual individual? Like,
I didn't see it anywhere.
No, this is a good point, actually, because when you're reading, and again, we realize that this is in preview, right? So everything we're talking about could change, especially things like accounts, users, so on and so forth. It specifically said $25 per user per month. And then on the limitations, it said 20 questions per day per account. So I don't know that
wording.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, so yeah, now that could just be that, hey, two different people wrote this blog and they mean the same thing, but like you never can assume that to be the case.
You hope so, because can you imagine you have 20 users in one account, they
right?
each get one question a day.
They all hop in, all 20 users hop in and ask the same question at once, and it just caps it out.
we were joking about this earlier, and I was like, I can't wait for the first person to be working on a P1 and be like, shit, I'm out of questions.
Call me at 12:01 tomorrow.
That's right.
I'll see if I can continue this. Yeah, the one thing that I thought was really interesting, and I don't know how this works, is, when they say plain English, they meant plain English. Like the person in the blog post, if you look at the examples, someone's in there just saying, hey, I can't reach my web server, or like I can't reach my app server. It didn't give any instance IDs, didn't give any IP addresses, didn't give any
no truly
VPC
identifiable
IDs, right? Like, I don't know how it pulled in that information. Like, I don't know, maybe you're running.
That can't be.
Like maybe you're running Amazon Q within the realm of a VPC, and it looks at it from that perspective. But like, hell, like, I don't know if anyone's seen naming conventions for shit nowadays. Like, there's a very small chance that web server is named web server. So I don't know. I don't know where they're getting that particular data.
They do reference in the blog post. They do mention that if you say web server, that your chatbot will go look for tags that might be relevant. And now that's still a pretty wide net to cast.
That's another assumption, right? Yeah.
So the fact that it worked in the blog post is pretty cool. Definitely worth putting through its paces. I think with all AI, and this is also, don't forget that this is also a facet of Q, right? Like this wasn't like, they didn't create this as its own tool. This is a facet of Q, like the insight. Thing. Right. So with all chatbots, I think you're going to get what you give. Like, you can use plain English and be like, hey, chatbot, I can't reach my web server, but you'll probably get better results ultimately, the more info you can give it, I would assume.
Well, and they also, like you said, this isn't its only thing, right? We're just talking about the network troubleshooting, but I think there was another demo I saw where it showed it kind of like Copilot, like GitHub Copilot, where they were using it in Code Whisperer, right? I think this Code Whisperer is like built in with that. Yeah. So, and they were using it in like their Cloud9 IDE. So there's a lot of other stuff going on with it as well.
Yeah, let's okay. So Yeah, the point is put that through its paces. I'm interested to see what they do with it. I'm very interested in seeing them pull in things like flow logs, CloudWatch alarms, metrics. The wider net of networking troubleshooting in AWS is got to be in there for it to be useful in the long term. So, but I am very excited about what they've started with. Okay, so let's move on to another one. So this is kind of a weird one. There's they just announced zonal auto shift for AWS. So they already had a thing called zonal shift, where which is to say that if an availability zone goes down, you can tell Amazon essentially like, hey, change the DNS records and move things between zones. This is by the way restricted to load balancers. So think about DNS records being changed here, right? This is a Route 53 offer. So the ALB and now the NLB now has the ability to do it automatically. So almost like you could set up like ASGs to do like auto scaling. You can kind of do this with zonal auto shifting. But you have to specifically, well, first of all, you can't, this is interesting interesting limit, which is you cannot have cross-zone load balancing enabled for this to work. It kind of makes sense, right? That one kind of makes sense. That is the default for NLBs at least. But you also have to very specifically specify the resources that are back end of the load balancer to opt in to the auto shift, to the zonal auto shift. So that's both those are kind of interesting. Again, the offer already existed as like a manual feature, so there is some price. I was looking at the blog post. It was a little unclear, but there is a cost associated with it, and that's why they want you to opt in with the resources you want to be using zonal auto shift. But it's just another way to make your increase the resiliency without having to do it yourself, right? To log in and the same way we would, in the old days and networking land, when some bump in the wire has a problem and we'd have to go move routes or move paths, right? So with BGP or something like that. So auto is good. You do pay for it, but it's an interesting resiliency play by Amazon.
Yeah, one of the things I thought was cool about this was that they, I guess by default, it sounds like they quote unquote practice this 30 minutes per week, which is adjustable. So they'll automatically do this kind of like AZ failover thing. And you can implement 2 separate CloudWatch alarms to kind of act as a circuit breaker for whether or not you want this to happen. So a certain alarm can be triggered where you say like, you can obviously schedule them to be practiced outside business hours, right? But you can also have that kind of functionality to when this alarm comes in to say like, actually, I don't want it tested at all tonight. Like we have something going on. Don't do it tonight. But one thing that I thought was really weird about this was the implication that your capacity should be oversubscribed to account for this, right? And you shouldn't rely on auto scaling to kind of trigger this, because auto scaling can take longer with this particular capability built in. So I think the example they gave is if you needed a total of 6 instances spread across 3 availability zones, that's 2 in each AZ. Well, you should increase it to 9 so that if that one AZ goes down, you're still at the right. 6 instances, right? And I was like, well, that just seems like...
It seems a little...
Yeah. It like defeats the purpose a little bit. I mean, I guess, functionality is the real winner there, right? In that regard. But, I'm curious who's all going to be using it to that capacity.
Alex, did you have any thoughts on this one? Or
Not really. I echo a lot of what you guys say. I didn't really read about this one too much. It sounds interesting, but yeah, Chris, some of the things you just mentioned are kind of, I don't know, just kind of weird.
It's absolutely true. I mean, the whole thing of and AWS will tell you, and thankfully, like in that keynote, the new frugal architect keynote, they talk about how cost is just another piece of it. We'll get to that in a little bit, but this feeds right into it, right? Like where AWS is basically saying, hey, if your app needs 6 instances, and it's kind of on you to decide which wins out. Is it a cost play that's going to win out here? Or, a continuity planning.
Yeah, so that was zonal auto shift. I think that's the thing. This was not a networking, heavy networking centered conference with many releases that relate to networking. But I think there are a few that we can kind of pan over here a little bit. Alex, there are a couple other things you wanted to touch on?
Yeah, I got one. I have been trying to follow Project Kuiper pretty closely, and it's not something that you hear a lot talked about. So I like to always bring it into these conversations because this wasn't really a reinvent thing. This was kind of just during the same time. So I guess it's not
like
it's
a
still applicable
update
here. Yeah, but because if you don't know, Project Kuiper is actually an Amazon product, not an AWS product, and I think that's on purpose, obviously. But the trick is they just announced the plan is to allow private connectivity to AWS. So I just think that's really cool. It makes sense. Kuiper. And it's like, that's probably the strategy before they even started building this thing anyway. But it's really cool to think that one day, you could have a whole earth covering constellation of satellites with private access to AWS, right? Talk about local zones and just bringing the cloud out further. This is a perfect way to do it.
The thing is, I think about it and I think about the same use cases like Starlink and whatnot. So Starlink is user focused, right? It's not actually app or lower cloud or whatever focused. Starlink makes sense to me, and I hate to say it because I'm not a huge fan of Elon anyway. But Starlink as a provider makes sense to end users, right? To if you're in the deserts of Africa, or if you're in Ukraine, for example, these are places that Starlink make perfect sense. Kuiper, I think, is a cool idea. I'm very curious, knowing how satellite connectivity is very one-sided, how you can run applications using Kuiper, or what that's going to look like, or end users, connecting from a branch to the cloud over Kuiper. I mean, obviously they're doing it, so somebody smarter than me has already figured that out. That's going to work, but I'm curious what the use case and will be.
You just wait, man. There's going to be, I bet there's going to be AWS outposts on Kuiper.
Literal outposts.
Yeah, there'll be racks of gear on these satellites. Extend the edge
to the moon,
to space.
Yeah, I mean, hey, your joke, but I really think that eventually you will see Kuiper outposts on the moon. Right, as the moon bases get built out, so don't be surprised at all.
I can't wait to see the AWS local zone moon.
It will absolutely
outpost, a literal AWS outpost on the moon.
Yeah. And to be fair, Tim, of course, Kuiper in their messaging, they do say a lot of the same things as Starlink, where they want to bring it to underserved communities and enable connectivity for everything, but they also have this side thing where it's hey, you can connect to AWS. So we'll see.
Yeah, the focus is definitely not AWS. It's kind of a side thing. But yeah, that totally makes sense.
Slightly unrelated, but sort of related is, did you see there's a news article that came out today that says that Amazon's actually paying SpaceX to put these in orbit, the Kuiper satellites in orbit, rather than
they kind of have
rather than Blue Origin. Well, I mean, you got Bezos right there with Blue Origin, so that's got to be a little weird, right? A little awkward at the family dinner.
Yeah, probably temporarily, right? Until they can really scale out. Who's
I think that's
really
probably
competing
what it is
against SpaceX right now, right?
I think that's what it is that Blue Origin probably just doesn't have the capacity to put a bunch of satellites in orbit probably right now. So that
I bet Starlink cut them a deal. They probably didn't overcharge them or anything like that. They were probably really nice.
Anyway.
So Tim, I think you had one more quick fire thing to talk about related to networking, didn't you?
Yeah, well, kind of. There was actually two little things for CloudWatch. So one is, and I know CloudWatch is not a network thing, but we as network architects and operators, we probably spend a lot of time in CloudWatch doing troubleshooting and stuff. So two things. One is that they just announced that We could do kind of like pattern recognition, anomaly detection, and stuff like that. It's all just baked into CloudWatch now. So you can actually bring up, from an anomaly detection perspective, you can, set your baseline for your network performance, and then you can actually, target certain areas and certain times and say, like, is this off the baseline? And it'll tell you via graphing and all of that. And there's another one about pattern recognition. So you can say, like, all right, well, from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. every night, I run this huge batch job, and then you can start seeing, it'll actually surface up those patterns in CloudWatch for you. So you don't have to go, run a bunch of really complicated queries and stuff. So if you think from a network troubleshooting perspective, certainly like the ability to show pattern recognition anomalies right off the bat without having to build complex queries and stuff is pretty cool.
Very valuable.
Yeah. And then one more for CloudWatch is they now have the ability, or announced the ability, to pull in and consolidate logs from hybrid, multi-cloud, extra cloud, like other sources. And rather than, do what we always do, which is just send logs to CloudWatch, how this one works is it utilizes AWS Lambda, and you actually build what they call a connector that will go and actually, depending on what the source is that you're trying to pull from, will go real time and grab these logs and pull them in and to give you that kind of, single pane of glass type of looking. And you can also, build CloudWatch alarms, do that same pattern recognition, and do all of that with logs from basically anywhere else, right? And I know Azure's had something similar with, oh crap, what is I just said it and then it just blanked out of my head. The agent, the Azure agent that you can put on servers and stuff. It's going to bug me until I remember. Oh, well, anyway, Azure has had something similar for a while. So they do it with an agent. These guys, so Amazon's not doing it with an agent. They're using like Lambda essentially to go grab the data, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, cool stuff. Not much commentary on that one for me, but yeah, obviously you see the value with that one. I think, like I said, not a lot of the major announcements here. I think there was one additional one that I thought was interesting was the MTLS authentication can be offloaded to ALB now. So if you have it's using the S2N, which is the open source, I guess, TLS implementation that AWS has started to use. I'm sure that will be baked into many more products than just this, but you have the option through AWS Private Certificate Authority to implement a trust store. So if you have, certificate-based client identities, you can now offload that functionality to ALB now, which is pretty cool. And then I think, they increased some quotas here and there for certain default limits on certain things. I think Alex, you got some of those numbers on you?
Maybe. Yeah, I have a couple. So I know they did the prefix limit. It used to be like stuck at 100. A lot of these are for hybrid connectivity. So on-prem to cloud. Prefixes limit was increased from 100 to 200, which I know everybody has probably run into that issue at some point. There was another one. I think there's more transit gateways that can be connected to Direct Connect Gateway now. There's more VGWs. It used to be 10 and now it's up to 20. So there was a lot of just quick little quota increases, like Chris said. But still no Direct Connect to Cloud WAN attachment.
Which I think
surprising.
Is
been waiting for that. It's been coming soon for a year and a half, it feels like. So.
Yeah, for sure. I think go ahead, Tim.
No, I was going to say it's such a almost like a no-brainer. It's such obvious functionality because pretty much anything your TGW you might want a TGW to do, you want a CNE to be able to do, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I have to assume something under the hood is far more complex than it sounds to us on the surface. But yeah, it totally makes sense. I think, but good point there, Alex. You talked about, we didn't get an announcement around, Direct Connect to Cloud WAN integration. Still got to use TGW for that. One thing that I also predicted that we would see that we didn't see was some further utilization or a kind of a significant announcement around the use of the multi VPC ENI thing that they announced just a few weeks back.
I think we all thought that, right?
Yeah, I figured that announcement was kind of prepping something for reInvent, so they'd be like, "Oh, and when in turn we're launching this cool new thing," but that just didn't happen. So, yeah, it was a little disappointing. But I don't know if you guys expected the same or not.
It was a 10-second clip. Like I watched the Alexandra Wiedesch and Matt Lewis talk. It was like a 10-second clip in one of their many diagram PowerPoint slides that they were going through, and that was it. It was like a quick mention, just showed it on the screen, and then kept talking. So it was pretty surprising for me as well.
Yeah, of all the things they didn't talk about that the most. Like it's the strangest thing, right? Because anybody who understands cloud networking looks at that and they're like, "Holy crap! Like this is a huge deal, and this enables so much." And yet we got this tiny little blog post, which was barely a blog post. It really was like 5 sentences long, right? Before reInvent. And like you know, Chris, I think we all thought like, okay, well, this is like burying the lead, and they're going to come out with something really cool at reInvent. And then, like you said, 10 seconds. Like it's almost like, I don't know how to say it. It's almost like, you know, the lack of saying something about it speaks more loudly than if they had spoken about it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they think it'll compete if we start using like NVAs and stuff, like, you know, it'll compete with some of the other products and services. Like I'm struggling because why offer that and then say nothing about it? It's just weird.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Well, before we transition to that, so that's pretty much everything networking centric that we could think of that we could cover in this episode. Right, there were some really good talks though. Like I said at the beginning of the episode, there was things about reinforcing the current state of networking in AWS. You know, there was a talk from Dewan Lightfoot that was great. It was like basically networking for the developers, and it really walked through the VPC kind of 101, networking 101 in AWS, and that was a great talk. The Alexandra Wiedesch and Matt Lewis talk on the more kind of advanced VPC setups and new capabilities. That one was good as well. There was even one, I can't remember the gentleman's name that's presenting, that was kind of going over the underlying networking components, talking about, you know, like how they're building the networking in the data centers and how they're building their own routing protocols with the, was it SDR?
Cider, yeah.
Yeah.
SIDR, yeah.
SIDR,
yeah. Right. Which was all really cool. But that was really the gist of what we could get through. So we'll link to those in the notes and things like that, so you guys can review as well. I guess so. Let's kind of pull back a little bit and let's look at just the conference as a whole. One thing that, you know, really stood out to me that I think I heard this on Software Defined Talk as well, which was funny, is Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA. It seems like he's just like he's on like a world tour. He just went to all these conferences. I didn't notice this until they pointed it out. He was wearing the exact same outfit at every conference, like Google Cloud Next, Microsoft Reignite, or not Reignite, Ignite, and then reInvent. It just to the T, man. Like leather jacket, black shirt, jeans, and these like same shoes.
That's what he packs it. That's his talk. That's his talk. That's his talk. That's what gives him his power.
Yeah, fair enough.
His conference outfit.
Yeah, I don't follow him closely enough to know if that's something he does on a regular basis. But I was just like, that's pretty funny. But yeah, you know, he was just like showing up talking about, you know, the partnership and, you know, them using NVIDIA for all this AI powered enhancement and things like that. Yeah, so it made sense, but that was a funny thing for me.
This is the last one. Because he's come on and made announcements about their partnership with all the clouds. And I think this was the last one, even though it's probably been a partnership for a while. But they, of course, had to wait to announce it until this conference happened. But yeah, World Tour is definitely right. He's been everywhere.
Yeah, right. The other major keynotes, like we had Adam Selipsky come on, kind of give the opening keynote. A few little announcements in there that I think we kind of expected, like Graviton 4, so the next iteration of Graviton. I think we all probably saw that coming. They did announce this thing called S3 Express One, which is kind of cool. So you have the capability of now deploying S3 buckets within a specific AZ, and it really enables these single-digit latency connectivity to S3 for these high networking required workloads in AWS to have that kind of single digit latency to S3. So that was kind of a cool announcement. I don't know. Was there anything else from Selipsky's keynote that you guys thought was not just AI washed speak, so to say?
He definitely took swipes. He took a lot of swipes at speaking of AI, right? He took some serious swipes at the competition, right? He had something to say.
Yep.
And that was very noticeable.
I think, I don't know if it was Selipsky, it might have been the one the day before or something. But when they announced the S3 Express
One, yeah.
They also announced like Aurora Limitless. There was like some RDS cool announcement. They were all under like the same kind of vein, but I thought the really cool thing that wasn't a focus of it was this new Caspian hypervisor. And it's essentially, I'm probably not going to do a good job of explaining it, but it's essentially like a multi-host hypervisor, and it allows them to do just things that I don't think anybody has come out with. Like this Aurora Limitless thing allows them to like shard like horizontally instead of just vertically. It's a really cool thing. And if I was making a hypervisor, if I was a company that was making one that maybe had just been acquired, I might be a little scared right now.
Yeah,
because
it's a good point.
It's pretty groundbreaking stuff.
So yeah, I didn't see too much on the Caspian, but like to me, it sounds like they've just like virtualized the hypervisor. Like it's just one.
They have a hypervisor of hypervisors.
Yeah, right. Just one more layer of its abstraction, I guess. Is that kind of the gist you got, Alex?
Yeah, basically, it was necessary. Like I want to say it was the second day keynote. I don't remember who the name of the guy was who did it, but you should definitely watch it because
it was Monday. I think it was Monday night. I think it was like because it was like the state of it was like the state of serverless was like the big focal point. Yeah,
yeah. But all these things, all these new products, they are only enabled because of this. So I thought it was really cool that not only did they make this new hypervisor, they didn't just say, "Hey, we made a new hypervisor. Figure out what to do with it." It was like, we made this and we've also already like come out with all these crazy new products that will show you exactly what it can be used for.
Yeah.
So it just was really cool. Yeah.
They probably had all those use cases to solve and then solved it. And they were like, yeah, actually, here's the product called Caspian that we use to solve this product. And now you can do it too, basically.
Yeah. The other keynote, like the one towards the end of the week from Werner Vogels was good as well. It was it was very funny the way it opened up, had this like Matrix intro that they shot. But it was all centered around this idea of the frugal architect. And it seems like the primary message was that cost needs to be considered as much of part of the functional design as any of the technical pieces, right? Cost needs to be, essentially a pillar in that design. Which sounds like it'd be common sense, but it was kind of like re-emphasizing that a lot. I think we've talked about that on the pod quite a bit, that how much cost needs to be factored in. It was still a great talk. It was actually, I mean, I always love listening to his keynotes. They're always they're always fun for me. Yeah. I don't know what else. I remember he also like brought back some PTSD for me. He was talking about, there's messages in early days online to be like, oh, Amazon is putting up, a couple thousand Nintendo Wiis for sale at 11 a.m. tomorrow. And I remember like, yeah, it was just like right before that time. I remember going online to buy my girlfriend a Wii at the time. And I'm just like, refresh. Like I was the exact person that he was talking about. And I was like, shit, man, I forgot all about that. I don't feel like I feel like some of that happened with PS5s, but you don't see that as common anymore.
Graphics cards. Remember when just a couple of years ago when all the NVIDIA graphics cards were announced, man, it was crazy.
Yeah, scalpers everywhere, man. And PS5 was I've heard that there's still PS5 scammers, not scammers, but there'll always be PS5 scammers, but scalpers out there still. And I'm like, because I still don't know that the demand is caught up, or that the supply is caught up to the demand on that one.
I don't think so. I got one. That's shout out Manny from the A1 Discord. He actually
he got me mine too.
Yes,
Manny was awesome, dude. Manny's
amazing.
Yeah, he's
big ups
awesome,
to Manny. Yeah, one thing I do want to call back to what you said, Tim, about Selipsky taking shots, which was very out of character. I feel like not necessarily. Yeah. I mean, I guess for Selipsky, but also just kind of for AWS in general. Yeah. There's a TechCrunch article that we'll put into the show notes as well, and the news article that we publish. Whereas it was kind of like noting that Selipsky, when we say he's taking shots, it kind of was like, the article points out that it was kind of like seen as like punching down, right? AWS has been the significant leader in this space for quite some time, right? And it's obvious now that they're trying to defend that and making sure that no one comes for the king necessarily with this AI race. He called out this example like, oh, you may have thought that your availability zones were redundant in France, but a flood and a fire can take it down for a while. And I was like, damn, dude, like, just calling like Google out
might
directly.
As well just say it on stage.
Yeah. And then also pointing out that like, oh, with Graviton, like, this is our, fifth iteration, or what is the number of chips? 4 chips. This is our 4th chip that we've released, and other cloud providers haven't even been able to release their first one yet. And it was like, you never hear them call that out. You always say like, oh, this is our next one. This is our most amazing thing. It's the next one we've done, but it's never like the other guys aren't doing shit, So I felt like that was a little strange. And kind of implying that Microsoft is so closely paired with OpenAI that like they're limiting themselves. But like at the same time, like Microsoft is using all the open source and other models as well. It's just obviously they do have a large partnership with OpenAI, but yeah, I don't know. I thought that was a really strange thing. I don't know how you guys feel about it.
Yeah, I mean, usually I feel like AWS just kind of, I wouldn't say pretends the other ones don't exist, but like you have indifference, like just complete indifference, right? And so to actually reach out and try to slap down, if you will, that's out of character, a little bit out of character. And you kind of wonder like, why waste the time on stage unless you have something to prove? So,
I mean, I still remember just a couple of years ago when you'd watch presentations from reInvent and they would draw, it'd be like a really messed up looking cloud. And they'd be like, if you have other places you put stuff, it looks like this. And they would never even acknowledge almost that there are other clouds out there. So yeah, this is just, it's noticeable that they're actually talking about others now.
Yeah. So with that, I think we can wrap up. Unless, I don't know, did you guys have anything else you wanted to throw in there with reInvent 2023?
Yeah. The only other, this is a real small one, but I've been seeing some funny memes about this. So Amazon Workspaces, I guess they announced a thin client, and it's less than $200. And it's like a computer. It's like a little box that looks like a fire. I don't know what all the fire things are. I've never owned one, but it's like a little fire box. Yeah, it's like the Fire Stick, but like the box.
Oh yeah,
and it's like this. It's dual monitor. You can plug in keyboards and a mouse to it, and it's under $200. So it was just crazy that that's such a low price point, and it's like it allows you to access your developer workstations. So that's like a VDI, a huge market there. Yeah. That's a huge market terminal that they're diving into. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
That's crazy. Yeah. No, that's awesome. I hadn't thought about that. Now I'm starting to think like, okay, so VDI is making a comeback. Essentially, we're just it's in the cloud now, right? But yeah,
I use a lot of VDI in my customers, so it makes sense. Like I think they even say in the video, they're like, everybody uses VDI by buying a $2,000 computer, and then they just connect to it, right? So it's kind of like a waste.
Yeah, same thing. I see it a lot. I work with a lot of government agencies here in Australia, and I see that a lot too. But it's mostly Azure Virtual Desktop. I feel like they obviously
same
have it pretty good stronghold on that. But yeah, it's good. I mean, that could change things for AWS for sure. That's a very competitive offering.
Yeah, a lot of people are bought into the Microsoft ecosystem already, which was why something like Azure Virtual Desktop makes perfect sense, because, hey, Windows licensing and it's all packaged and all that, right? But yeah, I mean, if you have the need for physical gear, right? Like if you have an office experience and you don't want to spend thousands of dollars per person to build all that out when you're just going to connect to a workspace, yeah, there's definitely value there. Let me see. Do I have any final thoughts on reInvent 2023? I definitely think like half the people or more came out of that with COVID. Dude, straight up, like you cannot seem to have any kind of conference these days without most of the, at least most of the presenters and most of the attendees going home with COVID. Is that just like, this is the new normal, I guess?
I was gonna say that's it, right? This is the new normal. People can't act surprised that normal is normal once they've been calling it the new normal for a year now. So it's just a fact of life. So stock up on the vitamin C and the other shit that you need to take. That
it's a rite of passage, man. Yeah. It's like every time there's a giant conference, you just see on Twitter just like everyone forever showing their screenshots of it, or their pictures.
Here's my COVID test. Yep.
Yeah, right. All right. Well, with that, I believe we'll wrap up this episode. So, So again, check the show notes. We also have a biweekly news document that we have posted that's also in the show notes. We'll put all the links to this stuff that we thought was interesting in there, so you can check that out. And it's hosted just on a Google Doc. So feel free to hop in and grab anything from there that you found interesting from the show. If you enjoyed this episode, please help us out, get some exposure out there. So share with a friend, like us on your favorite podcatcher. So, YouTube, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We need as much exposure as we can get. So we really appreciate it from you all, our avid and dedicated listeners out there. So with that, we'll wrap up. And thanks. This has been Cables to Clouds, and we'll talk to you next time. Hi everyone, it's Chris, and this has been the Cables to Clouds podcast. Thanks for tuning in today. If you enjoyed our show, please subscribe to us in your favorite podcatcher, as well as subscribe and turn on notifications for our YouTube channel to be notified of all our new episodes. Follow us on socials at Cables to Clouds. You can also visit our website for all of the show notes at cablestoclouds.com. Thanks again for listening, and see you next time.